Just playing with the sound meter. Oh, we're recording this. Good. Welcome to Stargatezing, a Stargate gazing podcast. I'm your host, Kathy.
And I'm your other host, Mary.
And every other week, we discuss an episode of Stargate, beginning with Stargate SG-1. Mary, how are you?
I am good. How are you? A little tired, but good.
Yeah, I'm alright. I'm need to get through 2 more days of work, and then I have a couple of days off work, and I'm very excited about it.
That is exciting.
Yeah. I took off next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. I'm just looking forward to the first week of November. I'll have a long weekend, and then there's Thanksgiving shortly after that, and that'll be great. Not that I'm doing anything for Thanksgiving, but
no,
it will be extra time off, and that will be nice.
It will be, and I was seeing pictures of friends posting about Canadian Thanksgiving this week, and I really, really want to eat Thanksgiving food, so I'm looking forward to getting there, and I know I can actually eat Thanksgiving food anytime, but
it's not the same.
It is not the same, and even if I'm sitting alone eating it, it's fine.
This will actually probably be coming out around Thanksgiving, even though it is still several weeks before Thanksgiving. Or maybe even just a little bit after Thanksgiving. If I felt like doing the math, I could figure that out, but I don't, so here we are.
Maybe I shouldn't date our podcasts in any way. Meh. I don't know how to do that, though.
Meh. It's not like we're wishing people happy holidays.
That is true. That would be, I don't know, we'd be waging war on Christmas if we wish anyone a happy holiday, so.
It's true. I suppose there's that. So, my apologies. I did not mean to wage any wars on Christmas or anyone else.
We're for peace.
Yes, indeed.
Just like SG-1 is.
Yes, as are the people that they meet in this episode, actually. That's a good segue.
Yeah.
The new people that they meet are very much for peace.
They are. I like them.
I do too. So should we get started?
I think we should.
All right. Fantastic.
We are talking about season 1, episode 8.
Yes.
The Nox. Yes, the Nox.
Theoretically, season 1, episode 8. As we've mentioned, there's weird different orders that the episodes go in depending on who you're talking about. Depending on who you're talking to, but that's what we'll go with.
Yes. By our accounting, that is where we are.
Yes. And really, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
What we say.
I think everyone listening will agree with that.
Yeah. Otherwise, why would they be listening?
Right. I only listen to things where I agree with literally everything that someone says.
That sounds like a healthy way to go through life. You're a well-rounded person.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
So this episode, would you like to kick it off?
All right. As so many episodes begin, we are in the gate room and kind of switching back and forth between the gate room and the command room. There's people calling out, and Hammond is talking to Mr. Secretary. We don't really ever find out what he is. Secretary of Defense, I would assume, but they just never refer to him as Mr. Secretary.
I was also assuming Mr. Secretary of Defense.
Yes.
Also, according to the end credits, his name is Swift.
Oh, okay. That I never picked up, so.
I only looked it up because I got to the end credits and there was Swift, played by, I forget who now. And I was like, who is Swift? I don't remember any Swift in this episode. So I had to look it up.
Apparently, this is who it is. All right. They're getting ready to open the gate, and Hammond is telling Mr. Secretary of Defense Swift that that's how they open the front door around here. SG-1 is up in that command room as well, and Mr. Secretary seems very impressed by what is going on. and asks Sam exactly what he's looking at when he sees the wormhole with its watery appearance. And she says that's the event horizon of a wormhole, and gives him some sciencey, jargony explanation that he doesn't seem very interested in listening to. They send a malp through, and Mr. Secretary asks if they know what's out there, and O'Neill says no, that's why they are going. And Mr. Secretary asks, well, I'm not so sure. Is that really why you're going? And then he goes on to say that the administration is really unhappy with the program's progress, which everybody was pretty surprised by, understandably, since from their perspective, they've been having a lot of good success and meeting a lot of new people. And apparently nobody really cares about any of that in the government, because all they really want is new technology and possibly some new weapons. They don't really care so much about meeting new cultures, because even Marco Polo brought back more than spice.
Yep.
And essentially he says that the entire program is a waste of time.
What a jerk.
He really is. I know.
Like, crap all over everyone's hard work.
He really did. Sam refers to this as being humanity's most important endeavor, and Mr. Secretary compares that to the moon missions, saying, well, all they brought back is rocks, so that's why we haven't been back in 25 years. So apparently he definitely does not appreciate science and exploration for science and exploration's sake. So O'Neill is pretty offended by that and asks what kind of comparison that is. And the secretary asks if they've brought anything back that could protect us from the Goa'uld, which they haven't, technically. But Teal'c does ask what kind of technology they're looking for. And so the secretary asks what kind of technology is out there. And Teal'c mentions that there are powers out there that even the Goa'uld seek, and mentions a creature on one particular planet that possesses the power of invisibility. And Mr. Secretary is like, invisibility? As in stealth? Yeah, what else does invisibility mean, man? I thought that was a really dumb reaction.
It is, yeah. Like, okay.
So good job, you. I'm glad that you're the one making the big bucks and the decisions about what's going on here.
Maybe he's been fooled too many times by people who just put their hands over their eyes.
He has object permanence issues. So yes, Teal'c confirms this does mean stealth, because they can disappear and reappear at will, these beings or creatures that they're talking about. And Teal'c at one point had been asked to go and retrieve those creatures so that they could learn their secrets. And when he failed to actually apprehend any of those creatures, Apophis had 2 of his men killed to get payback, I guess. So that's pretty shitty.
That Apophis. So wacky.
So of course now this is going to be their next mission, because they need to go and get these invisible creatures for Mr. Secretary to be placated.
And then they're on the mission. In the very next moment, as if no time had passed, but clearly some time must have passed, because they're all in their gear and they've sent a probe through and everything. They are on a planet that appears to have a lot of forest and vegetation, and
it looks surprisingly like Vancouver.
Oh my god, I know. Who could imagine? For a second, I thought I was watching the X-Files.
Weird. What a weird coincidence.
I know. The sky is overcast. You can hear a little thunder, and then you can also hear some birds chirping. They just got there, and they're kind of looking around, and they think they spotted something that was large.
One thing I forgot to mention, when O'Neill first comes through the gate on the new planet, he is like calling out to the others and looking around as though they've disappeared. And then he turns around and they're all standing right behind them. I thought that was a pretty odd choice, because like he's calling to them and nobody's answering, and we're being led to believe that they're just kind of gone. And then, oh, there they are.
I didn't even pick up on that.
Oh,
Way
no?
to go, me. I don't know. I was like, oh, he's looking around. He found his friends. Okay, we're cool.
I just thought that was weird and funny.
Yeah, I don't know where they would have gone, but yeah.
Right. It was a pretty open clearing that they were in, so it's not like they could have gone very far. Just turn around. They're right there. Anyway.
I think the rest of them are saying they saw a large flying creature, that Teal'c describes as a hummingbird with teeth.
Yes.
And
When we finally see it later, though, it is way bigger than a hummingbird. So,
yes.
But I guess Teal'c hasn't seen any hummingbirds yet and doesn't know.
So they are gonna head back to their stuff and get ready for their hunt. And O'Neill turns back to the gate, and it's gone. What? Not just the gate, but all their stuff too. It's just a empty clearing.
Indeed.
Holy cow!
It would be even easier to find his team then, because there's even fewer things in it.
You don't have that ring in the way with its gaping hole in the middle.
Exactly.
And then we're at credits.
Indeed. After the credits, the team splits up to look around. Daniel and O'Neill see a blur hovering in the air. They can see through it, but it just is kind of like a waviness in the sky, and it's making a super loud buzzing noise. And they decide they're going to try to take it down, but then something else shoots at it, and we see a lightning bolt. O'Neill, of course, blames Teal'c because it looked like a fire from a staff weapon, but Teal'c says it wasn't him. And then we see, upon closer inspection, that it is actually Apophis. As convenient timing would have it, Apophis and his men have come to hunt these things at the same time as SG-1.
Holy cow.
Thankfully, they do not see SG-1.
Whew. SG-1, though, saw them, and they need to talk about it.
Of course.
Daniel is like, we need to capture Apophis and find out where my wife is, and Skara. There's definitely discussion about this because that's not their mission and they're not prepared for it.
Right. They don't have the weapons that they would ideally need.
They don't have their weapons. They don't have any of the gear they brought with them because it's gone.
Right.
Most of their firepower is tranquilizers, which Daniel's like, great. He'll wake up in a holding cell and then we'll get what we want from him.
Right. But what about the resistance to any kind of anesthetic that we already learned that it has back in the episode with Kowalski?
I think Daniel has a lot of wishful thinking, and I'm not sure why he convinces everyone this is a good idea.
Right. I don't know either. O'Neill reminds them that even if they could tranquilize him, they don't know where the gate is, so how would they get him through the gate?
Yeah.
Teal'c says that Apophis and his men would have some kind of a homing device that would help them locate it. And so O'Neill asks Teal'c if Daniel's plan is plausible, and Teal'c thinks that if they do manage to take out the guards rapidly first, with the one gun that they do have and Teal'c's staff weapon as well, that it might actually work. So O'Neill asks Teal'c if he is okay with taking down someone that he used to view as a god, and Teal'c confirms that he is very okay with that. And Sam reiterates the fact that they will need to plan for this extremely carefully if they're going to be successful.
Their plans in this episode are super bonkers. I don't know what, I mean, obviously we know the outcome, so I don't, you're like, what were they thinking?
Right.
And I really, I feel Daniel's, just desperation, I think, to get what he wants, but I just, I guess also what else were they gonna do, I guess? Right. I don't know. Oh, I guess we'll wander around this planet looking for invisible bugs.
I mean, that is why they went there, though.
It's true. But how can they do that when the enemy is nearby? They might run into each other anyway. I don't know.
True.
Especially since they can't leave.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know where I went with that, but here's where I landed.
I rarely know where I'm going with anything I say, so here we are.
So it's plan execution time. We see Apophis and his Jaffa walking through the forest, and they're kind of hitting a little clearing with some rocks, and they're pretty exposed, and you see the Jaffa guard kind of looks down and he sees a footprint, so they're alerted that someone else is there, and they seem to sense something's amiss, and they are right, because they are then suddenly being attacked by SG-1, who is firing at them, and then there's exchange of fire while they're all firing at each other, the Jaffa and Carter, Daniel, and Teal'c. O'Neill sort of pops out and tries to shoot Apophis with the tranquilizer, but he is ready for O'Neill. He puts up some sort of personal shield that deflects the dart. He kind of smirks at O'Neill before he has his Jaffa pass a staff weapon to him, and then he kills the entire team.
I shouldn't be laughing.
Except for Teal'c. Sorry.
Yes.
He kills O'Neill, and then Carter's like, ah, sir! So she gets up, so he shoots her too. And then Daniel gets up, and he gets shot too. So they're all down.
To be clear, I'm not laughing that they're all dead. I'm
No.
just laughing at how you described it.
Teal'c, meanwhile, managed to like knock out, hit one of the guards. And it's just kind of him and Apophis who is standing there while Teal'c's firing at him uselessly as he walks towards him. And then they have a moment together, a face-off.
They do.
Apophis says, Jaffa Shova. And Teal'c looks around at his dead friends and then responds, Tel Shakamel, I die free. Apophis nods at this and takes aim. But then there's a whooshy sound and Teal'c is gone. And then there's more whooshies and Apophis is whipping his head around, but he does not see anyone anymore. Everyone is gone. And he's just standing there confused.
And dramatic music ensues.
Yes. Ooh, speaking of dramatic music,
Yes.
I read that this episode was nominated for an Emmy for its music.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. This is actually the only episode that I've made any notes about the music anywhere. So, cool. Good job,
Nice.
composers and musicians.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. A little while later, we see Daniel waking up, and we can see through the hole in his shirt that the wound that he had from the staff weapon that shot him has been healed. So he's apparently died twice now and recovered both times, which is super lucky because most people only die once and don't recover at all. So good job, Daniel. He looks around and finds Sam. And she also has a wound on her, or a hole where a wound presumably had been. And so he's like sticking his hand in her shirt to feel around to see if her wound is healed. And that's really rude since she's not awake. And then she does wake up and is like, what are you doing? Daniel mentions that he felt the blast kill him and is confused about then finding himself waking back up, and asks Sam if they're dead, and she's like, I think we are. Daniel said that he thought that heaven would be more upscale than this dark kind of cave-like place that they are finding themselves in, and Sam says that she does not think that this is heaven. Pretty soon they find Jack, who is also unconscious, also with a hole in his shirt, but with no wounds or anything around that hole. Jack wakes up and is like, what the hell was that?
What the? It's okay. How was that?
Because apparently he also remembers being killed.
Wasn't I just...
Killed.
Oh. This is a surprise then.
I'm not dead. I'm getting better.
They notice that Teal'c and all of the remaining weapons that they had are missing. So the staff weapon and the last of the tranquilizer guns that they had are all missing. Suddenly, a couple people come in and stare creepily and silently from the corner. They're kind of dressed in naturey clothes, like tan colors and looking like it's homemade. And they've got plants in their hair, so they're pretty flower child-esque.
Yeah. Do you think those are ornaments or do they grow in their hair?
I don't know. I was also wondering the same thing, and I found it to be a bit distracting and creepy.
Yeah. Or either that or they just like don't do anything with their hair and they just hang out and whatever falls in it, just they leave it there. I don't know. It could be anything.
This is true. Yeah. Also true. Daniel tries to introduce himself and SG-1, and O'Neill tries to talk to them as well, but it is very clear that they don't really understand anything that SG-1 is saying. They said that they were dead and they want to know what happens, so these two people gesture for SG-1 to go with them and bring them outside of this place that we were in, which apparently turns out to be a hut.
So they're walking now outside the hut. Daniel continues to ask questions that he doesn't get answers to. Like, is this your village? Where's Teal'c? They're led to another one person? I don't know.
I think there was a few people.
Yeah. They're led to more people who are
Yeah.
hanging out by some fruit.
As one does. I love to hang out with fruit.
One of them offers some fruit to them and tosses the fruit with a smile. That's all I want, is someone to toss me a fruit with a smile.
Absolutely.
The one doing the tossing was played by Armin Shimmerman,
Yay!
who is well known as Quark
There's nothing wrong with acquiring profit.
from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and also as Principal Snyder
Mr. Snyder, Billy Crandall chained himself to the snack machine again.
Pathetic little no-life vegan.
from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I forgot about that. I never really watched that show, but I did know that he did that.
He was, the character's a jerk, but I enjoyed him a lot. Very entertaining
Well, he's great, yeah.
performance. Yeah, he's so good. I love him. As SG-1 eats the fruit, they keep asking questions. O'Neill wants his weapons back. Daniel speculates this might be a family, and O'Neill's like, of what? Come on, O'Neill. And then a kid approaches O'Neill, who I just messed that entirely up because O'Neill asked the kid for the weapons.
Oh, that's always a good plan.
Well, anyway, they want things. They want answers. They want their weapons. They're not getting them. And then Teal'c appears. He has also not gotten any answers when his friends question him about things that they want to know, which are the same things that they've been asking this whole time. The kid then goes up to Carter and says Nefreu, gesturing to himself, indicating that's his name. And then Carter imitates and puts her hand on him and says Nefreu again. And the kid confirms. And so she says that she is Carter. And the kid looks really enamored of her. And Carter is extremely pleased and entertained with this. But O'Neill says she can't keep him.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
Out in the woods, we see Apophis looking around angrily, which is what he does best. And then we're back in the village again. Daniel's been asking the locals around the gate, but of course they still don't seem to understand. And Daniel mentions that he can't tell whether or not these people are human yet. Quark suddenly says that he'll take them to their doorway.
I like that you're going to call him Quark.
Of course I'm going to call him Quark. What else would I call him? I don't know that we ever actually get his name, the character's name.
We get all of their names, but we get them super late in this episode.
Oh, do we? Okay.
Yeah.
The only one I caught was Nefreu, so.
Yeah. Not surprising.
So apparently it did not take Quark any time at all to learn the English language. And Quark says that their weapons are gone. And they're not going to have them back. And Quark's wife says that you guys attacked them. And she sounds pretty accusatory when she says this. And from her perspective, it does make sense. They ambushed Apophis and they ambushed Apophis's guards. So from their perspective, SG-1 were the aggressors. They didn't know the whole backstory. So Sam tries to explain that they were only trying to capture them and they weren't actively trying to kill any of Apophis's guards, even though they were firing guns and a staff weapon on them and apparently did actually successfully kill one of the guards. So their argument that they weren't trying to hurt anyone and just wanted to capture them is not very convincing at this point. O'Neill also tries to explain that those people that they were shooting on were assassins and that Apophis is really bad. So despite what appearances may have made it look like, SG-1 was actually the good guys and Apophis and his men were the bad guys. Teal'c mentions that he had never seen any kind of a force field device like the one that Apophis had before. And Quark asks if they will just leave if he takes them to the gate. SG-1 is continuing to talk amongst themselves and are worried that Apophis is going to find these locals and hurt them if they just leave them here now that Apophis knows that SG-1 is here. And O'Neill asks Quark how they were saved, and Quark says that it's their ways. We don't get any more detail than that.
You don't need it anymore.
No. You know, our ways. That makes total sense. They, of course, ask for more detail, but Quark doesn't want to share any of that information with SG-1, who they are assuming are pretty barbaric at this point from the perspective of these locals. Teal'c asks if maybe they should just go now, and the wife says, well, you shouldn't go until your brother revives, but that won't be until later. And of course everyone's like, what brother is this that we have that we weren't aware of? And so she gestures for them to follow.
The team follows her. The woman's name is Laya, which eventually they say like way far away. But so they follow her back to the hut where she takes them to an area closed off with a curtain, and she whisks away the curtain. That's probably not the right word, but that's fine.
Sure.
Whisks away. It just disappears.
Yeah.
Where it's revealed that they've also rescued one of the Jaffa, who is unconscious. I was a little bit curious why this one was behind a curtain, but the rest of them were just laying around on the ground.
A valid question.
But we don't get the
I
answer
don't
to
know.
that.
He is also elevated up on a bed, and
He
most of them were on the
is.
floor, so that is a good point, and I hadn't even noticed that.
Maybe they sort people by their wounds.
Maybe.
Well, actually, no, he got hit by a staff weapon too.
The guard was dead. The others were only mostly dead.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
Anyway.
And then we head back outside.
Yes.
And they're talking about the Jaffa still. Laya says that he resisted their attempts to heal him, but Teal'c indicates that it's possible he'll still be healed because of the gold. The people of the planet express relief that he might not die, and O'Neill disagrees. He again tries to explain that this guy is their enemy. The enemy is very bad. They ask, can't you persuade him to join your side? And they're like, no.
Silly native.
Doesn't work.
What are you thinking?
And then in this describing of the enemy, they do mention it's the Gould, and Quark then says the Gould do not know the Nox. He says the Gould are there to hunt the Fenry or whatever those
Yeah.
bugs, bird creatures, invisible flying things are.
Yes.
So for the second time in their encounter, O'Neill asks to speak to someone else. He's like, I want to talk to the manager. What a Karen.
He's such a Karen.
So the Nox, point out the one of the guys who's there says he's the eldest Nox anyway. Ofer was his name, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
And they're like, great. Oh,
This guy seems unhelpful.
yeah.
He's been the least talkative.
Yeah. The Nox do not want any more death, and SG-1 promises they're not going to kill this Jaffa, but if he's allowed to leave of his own volition to go back to the Gould, he'll tell them about the Nox, and they're super worried about the fate of these people. He asks them, how do you defend yourselves? And Quark's like, we don't. The Nox rebuff their attempts to help, or their desire to help. They're just like, nope, we don't need your help. And then O'Neill, pulls his team aside to have a little talk. O'Neill asks if Teal'c knows this guy, and it turns out his name is, I think, Shackle.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah. And he served with Teal'c during Teal'c's Apophis days. And again, they keep talking about how they feel responsible for the situation, and they don't want to leave the Nox defenseless.
Good job.
They feel responsible, and they don't want to leave the Nox oh my god! They don't want to leave the Nox defenseless. Holy crap. Daniel points out, like, yeah, and we can't kill him either. And the others take a moment to be like, just stare at him. And he's like, that's not what I was suggesting. I was just saying. It's a thing. So basically, they kind of talk in a little bit of a circle because they need to take Shackle to protect the Nox, but they're also trapped because they don't know where the Stargate is, and also Apophis will probably kill them if they're out in the woods trying to find the Stargate.
Right.
So they just decide to chill for a second and go back to the point of their mission a little bit, which is to try to learn more about these people that they've met on this planet and see if they have anything, I don't know, helpful.
Yes. Elsewhere in the forest, Apophis is angry. Shocker. Apparently nobody can find Teal'c. Nobody knows where the bodies of SG-1 are or the bodies of the guards. And so they're all like, well, they can't just disappear unless they've learned the power of that beast, meaning the Fenry that we learned the name of earlier. Back in that little village inside the hut, Quark's wife wants to know why Shackle needs to be bound so tightly, and Teal'c says it's because when Shackle wakes up, he will be very upset and might start to attack if he's not.
Shackled Shackle.
Indeed. But the wife points out that, well, he is deceiving you because he is already awake, and then she leaves. So Teal'c asks if Shackle's been waiting for him to turn his back, and Shackle says, as you've taught me. So apparently Teal'c actually not only knew Shackle, but trained Shackle. And so Teal'c tries to convince him to come and join him with the Tari, and of course Shackle is unconvinced and is looking forward to his reward for catching Teal'c. And Teal'c is basically like, well, then that's too bad for you then, because I'm going to go back and beat Apophis, and when I go back to Chulak, I'm going to free all of our people, and it's sad for you because you won't get to see it because they're going to kill you when you fail to capture me or kill me first.
I liked a fair bit of elements to this scene. I liked how disgusted the wife seemed when she left. Like,
yes.
seemed like with both of them, just like
that was pretty funny.
Yeah, and then I also liked when she first leaves and Teal'c begins to speak to Shackle. They're both not looking at each other. Teal'c continues to stare straight ahead, and Shackle doesn't even open his eyes to answer him. And I just thought that was really a good scene. I don't know.
It was, I agree.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. And I appreciated the shade that Teal'c was throwing at Shackle as well. Teal'c is always a very well-spoken character. I appreciate a lot of the lines that he has.
Yes, he's good.
Yes. Back outside the hut, O'Neill and Daniel are trying to make some weapons, so they're using whatever little knives they happen to have on them still, which, why didn't the Nox take their knives? I don't know. But apparently they still have knives, and they're trying to make bows and arrows. And Nefrayu comes up and asks if they're making weapons, which of course O'Neill says that yes, they are. And so O'Neill goes off and practices shooting, and I want to know where he got the fletching for his arrows.
What's the fletching? I don't even know how the parts of an arrow.
The fletching is the feathers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know where those came from. Maybe
where did they get the feathers from?
Maybe you plucked them out of their hair, because I'm pretty sure I saw some feathers in someone's hair too.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, maybe. It's a good
Probably
point.
not, but
I'm assuming that they didn't manage to climb any trees and kill any birds to get it, so your theory is more plausible than mine.
Maybe there's just a lot of feathers laying around everywhere.
Could be. Do those things, the Fenrir don't have feathers. They're more like bugs.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I heard birds chirping, so there's got to be birds somewhere.
There are birds around. Anyway, Nefrayu says that the arrow would be super helpful for helping them to get the fruit out of the highest branches, and asks why they want to hurt the bad guys. O'Neill argues that he doesn't actually want to hurt them, but he believes in peace, and he only fights because he has to, because the enemy gives him no other option. And so the kid says that he wants to understand this better, and then all of a sudden a Fenrir comes up and is hovering over them and looks like it's about to attack them. It's not invisible, so O'Neill is able to get a clear shot at it, and it suddenly turns itself invisible as he hits it.
So when you were talking about the knife, which didn't occur to me when I was watching it, but I was thinking about Nefrayu talking about how he could turn his weapon into a useful tool for getting fruit, and then I thought maybe they don't see knives as weapons. And maybe they just see them as useful tools too for other purposes. Yeah. I don't.
Good point.
Yeah, that's.
Well, if they're peaceful, it's a good point. If they're peaceful people, they might not even think of using a knife as a weapon and only think of it as a tool.
They sure knew what the guns were though, and took those.
Yes. I suppose probably they saw them in action, killing each other.
Yeah, that's true.
Might have something to do with it.
Maybe. And then we are with Daniel and Ofer. Ofer is touching some trees and licking his hands. He does offer some to Daniel, holds out his hand for him, but Daniel politely declines.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm trying to quit.
Daniel is still trying to get any answers from these people. He says, is the forest where the medicine comes from? And Ofer answers, we get life from the forest. We get it from everything. Daniel keeps asking the questions, but this Knox dude won't budge. He says knowledge takes time and that they teach the young to be wise over many years. Daniel then asks how old he is and then explains how we measure time so that Ofer can quickly calculate that he's 432 years old.
How do we know that the amount of time that it takes for this planet to go around their sun is the same as on ours?
We don't. Maybe they're just ballparking it. I don't know.
That must be it.
Maybe.
Somewhere else in the forest, wherever it is that O'Neill happens to be at this moment, Quark suddenly comes literally out of nowhere and says, you're not going to teach my kid your ways. And O'Neill wants to know how he did that. How did he appear out of nowhere? Quark says it's not the Fenri that have the ability to hide. It is the Nox. The Nox hid the Stargate and also hide the Fenri from the people that try to hunt it, which would be the Goa'uld and Apophis. And he chastises O'Neill for trying to kill it. O'Neill says he was only trying to protect the kid because the Fenri was threatening them. And he also tries to warn Quark that if Apophis finds out that the Nox are the ones that actually have the power of invisibility rather than the Fenri insect thing, that there is going to be a lot of trouble. Quark says that their ways have served them for a long time, and O'Neill says that they're going to be enslaved, and Quark says, we are slaves to no one.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then we flip back to Daniel.
Yes.
And Ofer. And Daniel is asking how long the Goa'uld have been coming to their planet. And Ofer says they've been hunting there for as long as he remembers. Daniel recommends burying the gate, but it's pointed out to him that the Goa'uld will definitely know someone was there if they do that.
Right.
That's it.
That is it.
And then back in the village now, the team is there talking about the Nox amongst themselves. So Daniel, is like, Over's 432. They realize they are not human. O'Neill reveals that the Nox are the ones with the power to hide themselves and everything else that has been hidden. They are still super worried about Apophis taking this technology or destroying the Nox when he realizes he can't take it from them if that's what happens. So they got to take Shackle with them. Quark appears though and says no, that SG-1 cannot be trusted with their enemy and that the Nox are not afraid of the Goa'uld, which is totally bizarro to SG-1, who cannot imagine them not being a threat. Daniel's still trying to convince him, but Quark rides for consent, and that is the only way Shackle will go with them.
Good job, Quark. Consent is very important. Thank you.
Yes.
Out in the forest, Apophis is... Can you guess?
Is he angry?
He's very angry.
Oh my god.
Who would have thought? Guards say that they still can't find the Stargate, and so Apophis asks for Teal'c instead. I thought that they had tracking devices that would help them find the Stargate,
Yeah.
according to Teal'c. But I guess that maybe the magic that's hiding it hides it from those things too.
Maybe he left his tracking device at the gate like O'Neill.
Maybe. That would have been stupid.
Or
but
homing
possible.
device. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Back inside the hut, Teal'c offers Shackle another chance to join him and the Tari, and of course Shackle is still not interested, and so starts screaming and has a blade hidden inside his gauntlet and stabs Teal'c with it. So I guess he wasn't really tied up as tightly as Laia had seemed to think that he was. When Laia came in to see what all the screaming was about, Shackle stabs her as well and then takes off. Outside, Sam is cleaning up Teal'c's wounds and says that Teal'c's going to be fine, but they need to find Shackle. And out in front of the hut, the Nox are looking all translucent and wavy as they stand over Laia and waving their hands, and presumably are trying to heal her from the stab wound that seems to have been fatal. Out in the forest, Shackle is spying on them as this is happening. If only SG-1 was looking for him a little harder, because he's like right there 20 feet away while this is happening.
They're so distracted.
They are very distracted, apparently. But Shackle sees the Nox healing this woman who he had killed, and then all of a sudden she gets up and seems fine. And Shackle has a kind of knowing look on his face as he then sneaks off into the woods.
Laya is taken inside the hut. The Nox explained to SG-1 that they healed her the same way they healed SG-1. It's also revealed they are visible during what they're calling the ritual of life. O'Neill points out this is a weakness, but they're hidden again, so it's cool. I guess they're looking around again for Shackle because they find some steps.
Elsewhere in the forest, we see Shackle running away. And then we're back with Teal'c and O'Neill, and the actor kid, Nefreu, is like, I suppose I shouldn't be critical because he's just a kid, but his acting skills in this scene in particular were distractingly bad, I will say. He says he wants to go with Teal'c and O'Neill because he's never seen a Goa'uld before. And O'Neill says that that's not safe, so he needs to stay there with the other Nox. And O'Neill and Teal'c resume walking, but when they look back, the kid is completely gone. Elsewhere in the forest, we're back with Shackle again, and he is calling out for Istra. He finds the other Jaffa, and Teal'c and O'Neill are watching this happening, and Teal'c translates that he's telling them all about the Nox. Back at the hut, Quark and O'Neill are arguing, and then the other family members come up and say that Nefreu is missing. Apparently he hasn't been seen since that last episode with O'Neill where O'Neill told him to go back home.
Uh-oh.
And O'Neill confirms he did tell the kid to go back home. Out in the forest, Nefreu finds Apophis and introduces himself. And we hear ominous music playing, so again, good job, musicians. Apophis is looking for once not angry, but seems rather confused and amused at this kid. And then he raises his sparkle bling and starts approaching Nefreu. We go back to Quark and Daniel and O'Neill, who are all looking for Nefreu, and O'Neill swears that he told Nefreu to go home. Quark points out that the very young do not always do as they're told, and the team and Nox find Nefreu looking unconscious, but I think that the takeaway here is that he is actually dead. Sam and O'Neill think that it must be some sort of a trap, which of course makes sense, and Quark picks up the kid and they all take him back to the hut.
Back at the village, the Nox need to do the ritual of life on Nefreu. O'Neill thinks they should wait because clearly this is a trap. And Daniel's like, well, he can be revived, but O'Neill knows the Goa'uld are going to attack during it because the Nox are going to be visible. SG-1, decides again to defend them, but they need weapons, and the Nox again says there will be no killing. Jack is like, well, fine then, we're just gonna leave you, and they'll find their own way back to the Stargate because they won't watch a slaughter. But it's a total fake out because SG-1 aren't those people. They're just throwing up a little, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sham.
It's a sham. Meanwhile, the Nox begin the ritual because it will take too long if they try to get them to the rest of their people.
Just beyond the hut, we see SG-1 gathering their stick spears, and there's apparently one tranquilizer dart left that O'Neill is tying to his spear. They're talking about their plan, and O'Neill points out that earlier when a guard had thrown a staff weapon to Apophis, that staff weapon was able to get through Apophis's force field. So maybe something that is thrown slower than a blast or a bullet might be able to get through the shield. And that's why he thinks that possibly this spear and tranquilizer combination will work.
This seems like another half-baked idea. Like, there's no guarantee that that's the reason that the weapon passed through the shield. And
no.
They're totally doing this on a guess that it might work.
Yes, but then Sam says it in a more sciencey way, so of course it totally makes sense at that point because she said it with science. And O'Neill's like, yeah, that, what you said. Back at the hut, the Nox are performing the ritual. And back with SG-1, the team is hiding and preparing to ambush the Jaffa in Apophis. Teal'c is hiding behind a tree that is significantly narrower than he is because he's a very large man. And he's also holding a huge tree branch that he's going to be using as a weapon. So how did the Jaffa not see him way in advance before Teal'c managed to whack him over the head with the log that he was carrying? It made me giggle. Daniel's also hiding behind a tree, but at least it was like slightly closer in match. I mean, the tree that Daniel was hiding behind was still too small for Daniel as well, but it wasn't as comically small as the tree that Teal'c was trying to hide behind, at least. Sam and O'Neill were hiding under some plants, so at least they were actually legitimately harder to see than Daniel or Teal'c were. SG-1 works to take down the guards despite their bad guerrilla warfare skills, and they do have some moderate success with that. The Nox hear the battle happening, but continue with the ritual anyway, and the fighting continues. Apophis slowly backs away from SG-1 and his guards and is putting his hand on his force field button. Apophis tells O'Neill that he's a fool and that he's going to kill him, and O'Neill's like, what, again? He shoots his arrow at Apophis, but Apophis suddenly disappears.
So we never know if this bonkers theory is true or not.
I would bet that it doesn't matter because Apophis is probably still fine. Right. O'Neill shouts out to the now empty forest that Apophis and his men are going to be back and they are not going to spare the Nox.
And then we're back at the Stargate location. There's still no gate. Quark / his name is Antaeus,
okay.
which I finally wrote in my notes at the end, which is a good time to do people's names.
Yeah.
He appears out of nowhere. He tells them that the Goa'uld have already been sent home, and they do plan now to bury the Stargate. SG-1's still worried because the Goa'uld have ships and could still destroy them, and Nefreu appears then too. They're talking, and the SG team explains they stayed to help because it's their way to defend the weak.
That's pretty insulting.
Yeah, and they're afraid for the Nox.
Yeah.
And the Nox respond to this by revealing they have a very large city floating in the sky above the forest. So clearly they've been holding out, and clearly they're okay.
Yes.
So Quark's like, fear not.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the gate reappears. Woohoo! He also had said at one point that he sent back their weapons through the gate, and I just think that equipment's gone because it hit an iris and...
Oh yeah, that didn't even occur to me, but yeah, you're totally right.
Sorry, Malp.
That's really funny. What I was thinking about when he said that was, how did he know the address to dial?
That's a good question.
Did they ever say where they were from exactly? And if not, how did they know? And does he just happen to have all of the gate addresses memorized?
Good questions, all. Answers we'll never get.
Yes.
So now that the gate has reappeared, he also says, one day you will learn your way is not the only way. And then the Nox depart by disappearing. And the team just kind of stares at the giant floating city that's just sitting there, kind of mocking them.
Yeah.
You know, they have a little discussion about how technologically advanced the Nox are clearly, and why they chose perhaps not to share that information any earlier.
Right. They point out that it seems to be even more technologically advanced than the Goa'uld are.
Daniel laments that now all of this is going to be lost to them because they're going to bury the gate and SG-1 can never come back. And he's like, we should have listened. And then Jack quotes Quark saying, the very young do not always do as they're told. And says this is something worth taking home with them. And that's a costly lesson they just learned.
I cannot imagine Mr. Secretary is going to be very happy.
Probably not.
They at least got the anesthetic that we saw a few episodes ago, though, so that's not nothing.
That's true, but that's, peacemaking, not
But
not
that's just medicine,
stealth.
yeah. That's not weapons. That's just medicine to save people's lives, so who cares about that stuff?
Yeah. So, did you like this episode, Mary?
I did actually like this episode, aside from the fact that their hair annoyed me and was distracting to me. I thought it was an interesting plot to have this race of people who seem to be simple and who SG-1 is assuming are way less advanced, and then turns out at the end that they are not nearly as simple as they seemed. And I appreciated the fact that Armin Shimmerman was in it because, as I said, I'm a huge fan of him. And overall, it was just an entertaining episode. What were your thoughts?
I probably pretty along the same lines. I also enjoyed that Armin Shimmerman was in that. And I did like the way they appeared to be very primitive and needing of protection from the perspective of SG-1, but it turns out to be untrue. I'm just saying the same things you just said.
Yes. Good job.
I appreciated that they're showing that this show is not just going to be like, oh, we're just going to do things our way and it's going to be great. And they're showing that this world that they're stepping into is much larger and full of many different types of people, and not just like species wise, but life philosophy and experience.
I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's good too that like a lot of the episodes we've seen so far, they've seemed to kind of imply that a lot of these other cultures were less advanced than humans and so more primitive and backwards. So I did appreciate that here they took a culture that seemed to have a really simple lifestyle and made them more advanced than us to kind of go against that stereotype that we've been seeing up to this point.
Yeah. I liked that they were trying to do a good thing, but it was completely unnecessary and not asked for, and they refused to listen when they were told to go away.
Yes.
I don't know why that particularly. I don't know. It's not entertaining. It's just an interesting story.
Yeah. Agreed.
And perhaps next time they will know better and they will do better.
Right. And speaking of next time, what happens next time? What are we watching next?
Next time on Stargate SG-1 / Stargatezing, we will have watched Brief Candle, and we'll be discussing that episode, numbered 9 in our count. And that episode description is: on the mysterious planet Argos, the beautiful Cynthia seduces Colonel O'Neill, which means he is condemned to an Argosian lifespan of only 100 days. As he turns gray and old, will his team succeed in their frantic search for a cure?
Ooh.
What's gonna happen?
Sounds like it won't be at all problematic or sexist. I actually don't remember. I remember vaguely the storyline.
Yeah,
I don't actually remember
I don't
specifically
know
if it
either.
is problematic, but I'm just saying it sounds like it probably will be because it was the 90s.
Right.
So one can pretty safely assume.
it's a reasonable bet.
Yes.
But perhaps we'll be wrong.
Hopefully so.
That would be good.
So between now and then, if you've enjoyed the episode, please make sure that you subscribe to us on Apple or Google, whatever you happen to use for your podcast catching. Also, if you would like to give us a 5-star rating, we would greatly appreciate it. If you don't want to give us a 5-star rating, I suppose you have that right as well, but we would hope that you would not give us a non-5-star rating. The podcast is released every other Monday, and we are also probably, by the time that this comes out, going to be live on our YouTube channel, so you should be able to find this podcast on YouTube as well as any podcast catcher that is out there. You can email us at stargatezing@gmail.com, StarGatezing. We're on Twitter at Stargatezing. We have a Facebook page that you can like as well. And we have a new website, which is super exciting, stargatezing.space.
Yes.
Because that's a great domain name. So we are at stargatezing.space for our website.
Yeah, we are.
Super excited about that one. And of course, last but not least, you can find us on patreon.com/stargatezing, and any donations that you feel like you would like to make are very much appreciated. So again, thank you for listening. I am Mary.
And I am Kathy.
And this is Stargatezing. The end.
The end.
There was a lot of dialogue and a lot of switching back and forth, so I felt like I was being redundant when I kept saying, like, Quark said this, and then O'Neill said this, and then Quark said this, and then O'Neill was like this.
That's what happened.
And is what happened. Yeah, it was a lot less action-y and a lot more talky than a lot of episodes that we've had, too.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. But that's okay.
Oh, Pepper, you snorer.